Bedros Keuilian, author of Man Up, Cut the BS and Dominate Your Path. And today you're going to learn the key elements to leadership and the responsibility that you have as an entrepreneur. Stay tuned.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty interview series. Where today we're going to take an insider look at the demands of leadership and entrepreneurship. Are they so high that it's just not possible to genuinely have a quality of life? Or is it? If you're a new listener, a new viewer to the show, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. If you're a regular, big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners. And we're also very excited that Inc.com made us the #1 podcast to listen to make you a better leader. So thank you for sharing the show with everyone you know. Remember, we always need your help in staying relevant, so please get yourself over to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. As a leader, whether you're a CEO, someone in the C-suite, sales leader, entrepreneur, or leader in any capacity, you're aware that leadership and entrepreneurship are highly demanding of your time. But is it possible to attain the level of success you desire and it not cost you the very heart and soul of who you are? Well, stay tuned because you're about to find out. Our guest today is Bedros Keuilian. Now, as a child, Bedros ate out of dumpsters, couldn't speak a word of English, and today he is a best-selling author, the founder and CEO of the world's fastest-growing fitness franchise, Fit Body Boot Camp. He's also famous for helping 24 of his clients go from being in debt to growing to 7-figure generating empires, and he's helped thousands more turn their passions into multiple 6-figure businesses. So ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome Bedros Keuilian.
Thank you. Holy cow, what an introduction. Thank you.
Good to have you on, man. I've been looking forward to this interview since our mutual friend Tony Grabmeyer introduced us, and he's a rocking great guy. So I knew it was going to be a great person for me to meet, and I'm very happy to have you here.
Thanks, man. I appreciate the opportunity.
So, there's quite a transformational story in those few lines I mentioned in the intro, and I want to get into the nitty-gritty of that in a bit. But let's start here with the very question I presented right at the beginning there. Do you believe it's possible to attain a high level of success as an entrepreneur, like the level that people really desire, and it not cost them their heart and soul?
I do. In the beginning, it is going to cost you your heart and soul. But I do believe you can get to a place, because I'm there right now, where it's not going to cost you your heart and soul. And by that, I mean, we all start off in a state of hustle and grind where we have to bleed to make it happen by sheer will. We have to put doubt and fear aside. But there comes a point in an entrepreneur's life that hustle and grind turns into scale and structure, where you have vision, you have a team, and you have this mission that you're accomplishing.
And I definitely want to get in. I want to get into the nuts and bolts of that in a minute. But let's just talk about this, because I had this conversation with somebody very recently. When we're talking about that, put the fear and doubt to the side and just grind and make it happen. How do you know the difference from an entrepreneurial point of view? How do you know the difference between I'm dedicated to this, I'm committed to this, this is what I'm focused on, and it's not quite working yet, or maybe I'm on the wrong path? How does somebody work that out? Because there is a point where it's not profitable in either of those two lanes.
Sure. And I got to tell you, the 3 of my businesses I've started and they weren't profitable. I gave it my all and I ended up shutting them down. Fit Body Bootcamp, my franchise and my coaching business have exploded into empires. And so part of it is you have to rely on mentors. You have to look at people who are already where you want to be and ask them, hey, I've got this idea, Dove, and you're already successful as an entrepreneur. Do you think this idea has any legs? And I'll give you a great example. My dear friend, Craig Ballantyne, told me somebody reached out to him and he said, hey, Craig, I've got an idea for a fitness product that people can do at home. And it's working out while ironing, but without the iron. And I said, Craig, are you serious? He goes, yeah, the guy was absolutely serious about this. And he thought that it was a great idea, working out while ironing, but without the iron. And Craig, thankfully, said, look, this is the stupidest idea on the planet. Do not do it. You're going to waste time, money, energy, and effort. Now, I don't know if the guy did it or not, but that was an idea that was destined to fail. But we have to go to mentors, whether you buy a mentor, hire a mentor, or you have some that are friends and they're trusted. You go, look, I've got this idea. Does it have legs? If it does, then you simply have to commit until you create the outcome that you want.
Okay. And I get that for the person who is starting. But what I was referring to is, because I think that we live in a world where we think there is instant success. We think it actually could exist. And you and I both know that is not a reality.
Sure.
So when that person has been putting in that time, that energy, that commitment, and they are 2 years in, 2.5 years in, they've not broke through yet. They have all the belief in the world. They are putting the doubt to the side and they're making it happen. What would be your guidance as somebody who's done this in spectacular form to that person to say, here's how you know the difference between you're hustling, you're making it happen, and you're on the wrong road, or you're hustling and you're making it happen, and it's going to break through any minute now or within the next X number of months?
Yeah, that's a good question. So first of all, I think 2 years is nothing. And in a world where we want immediate satisfaction and gratification because of the social media world, we want answers right now. We want the money right now. We want the following and the social media reputation right now. Go in for a decade and a decade and a half. Because if you think your idea has legs or if there's any traction at all, your idea will evolve over time. Like Fit Body Bootcamp started off as a indoor boot camp inside of gymnastic centers. And we were doing 1 hour workouts. And we said we could only handle 15 clients at a time. And when we did that, it was generating about $10,000 to $15,000 a month. It wasn't anything to write home to.
Right.
Today, we're in our own standalone locations worldwide. They're 30-minute workouts. We have 30 to 40 clients at a time. So if you stick to an idea or a business long enough, maybe the original idea you had didn't work, but you will pivot enough over time.
Right.
And the marketplace will tell you how you need to pivot and when to make it happen. So I think more people need to listen to the marketplace, number one, and number two, give it a decade, not just a couple years and go, well, I think it didn't work.
Well, I think what you just said there is, as I'm listening to you, I think that there's an important position, and that is the willingness to, because I've said this before, you need to be kind of a bit thick-headed and you have to be driven and focused. But there's this nuance that I think people miss, and that is people are either very flip-floppy and they're abandoning ship every 20 minutes because, as you said, it's supposed to be instant gratification in the world that we live in. And on the other side, people are pig-headed and they just keep going. And I think it's, based in, and I'm totally in alignment with what you're saying, is that you have to be focused, but you have to be willing to pivot and adapt. And that is coming from listening to the marketplace. How did you do that? How did you listen to the marketplace? Because one of the things I wanted to bring up here is, you and I had a conversation before we were on air, that I've been into the health and fitness world for 40 years, not as a business, but as my life. And I can tell you that I have watched brilliant trainers starve to death. You know what I mean? I mean, just guys who really understand the body, ladies who understand the body amazingly, and have starved to death because they've not done that. how did you learn to listen to the marketplace that was simply saying, I'll introduce you to my friend and you can train her too?
Sure. What's funny is I used to be stubborn and pig-headed where my knowledge was concerned. And I said, this is how you train people. Personal training is one-on-one. And it could only be one-on-one because it's personal training, right? The reality is that means only 0.1% of the society could afford a personal trainer at $600 to $1,200 a month. And so I was that guy who was starving because I was too pig-headed to look outside of this box. Instead, what I decided to do, because you could only starve for so long, you could only miss your rent for so long, you could only eat top ramen for so long, I decided to be open to feedback. Mm-hmm. I said, all right, let me be open to feedback. But that takes a lot of self-esteem work, a lot of self-image work, because for most people, what they do for a living is tied to their self-esteem and self-image.
Absolutely.
And so if you're narrow-minded and you say, this is how my industry is, you have now a fixed image of your industry. Well, what if I have a loose image of my industry and say, you know what? Show me a better way. Show me another option. Sell me on why group training or 30-minute workouts at a lower price might be better for not only the entrepreneur, but the client. And the moment I open myself up to feedback, because I no longer look at feedback as criticism, I look at feedback as opportunity to grow. And that was my problem. I had low self-esteem, low self-image, and I looked at feedback from others as criticism. So I would go fists up.
Sure.
Right? And now I look at feedback as the more feedback you give me, Dove, the faster I evolve and become the person I'm supposed to be.
So what was that turning point for you of going, because, we've all got egos. It's part of the human condition. You get skin, you get an ego. And then your ego says, somebody's giving me criticism. I want to punch them in the head and tell them they're wrong, whether that's physically or verbally or emotionally. But, we are defensive around that. What was the turning point for you that made you go, okay, this is feedback?
Yeah. The turning point was a very specific day in 2002. I was training a gentleman in a big box gym. His name is Jim Franco. And he was a personal training client of mine, and he would come in 3 times a week at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I would always look outside because I could see through the double doors who's pulling in, and he would pull up in a different car every day. He had 3 or 4, like a Mercedes, and he had an Escalade SUV, and he had a little convertible car. And I would always ask him, Jim, you're obviously a successful man. How is it that you did this? And he goes, well, I'm a decade of work. I said, all right, great. And he goes, since you're asking me about being an entrepreneur, can I give you some information? I go, sure. He goes, you are not a good entrepreneur. And I said, can you tell me why I'm not a good entrepreneur? He goes, well, you're actually an order taker. I came in here looking for personal training, and you simply took my order. You never sold me anything. And I got to tell you, Dove, that hurt so bad because I thought I had sold him a 6-month program for 3 times a week. He said, every day I look at you while I'm warming up, while you're working with other prospects, and you're letting people walk away who should be paying you. And I said, well, they say they don't have money. He goes, that's called an objection. He goes, you can overcome that. You have to build more value. And I was constantly fists up with him. But every day he would come in. See, once I started the conversation of how do I become an entrepreneur, every day he would come in and go, did you let more people walk? Are you still an order taker? Do you want to learn how to sell? And when I finally, it hurt. And, he was in his late 60s, and he was a very curmudgeon-y old dude. He was not gentle with my spirit at all. And I appreciate that now. Looking back, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And so finally I said, yes, man, teach me what I need to know. He showed up with a sales tape from Tom Hopkins.
Oh, yeah.
And he goes, listen to this. Right? Yeah. And I go, but it says real estate sales. And I was still giving him resistance. He goes, it doesn't matter that it's real estate. You just, in your head, replace real estate with personal training. Okay, great. So I listened to Tom Hopkins. Then he gave me a Brian Tracy tape. Then he gave me a Jay Abraham cassette tape. And before you know it, Zig Ziglar, and I'm learning sales and influence and marketing. And all of a sudden, my sales percentage goes from about 20% to over 70% of the people I was sitting across from, I was turning into personal training clients. I went from an order taker to a closer to a heavy hitter only because he was relentless in forcing me to accept feedback.
That's very cool. and it's very interesting that how much it can take for us to back away from our own ego and actually listen to somebody who knows better, or to be willing, because as you said, we our jobs are part of our identity, and if you attack my job, or you attack my what it is that I do for a living, I feel personally attacked is the way most people will respond, and as opposed to just refining you and bringing you more to the surface. And something else you said there was, your closing rate was 20% and you took it to plus 70. But let's be honest here, mate. 20% was pretty good. When you look at personal trainers, many of them are at like 2%.
Yeah.
Right? So 20%, you probably look like a heavy hitter to a lot of trainers.
Sure.
But then to take that to 70, it would have been like, you've got magic pills, right? What are you doing?
Oh, dude, it changed my life. I remember this is going to sound silly, but this is how impactful it was for me. The first time I started closing 7 out of 10 people, 6 out of 10 people, I thought I had a fluke day or fluke week.
Right.
As this became consistent, I actually started giving myself permission to buy gallons of spring water instead of drinking water. I spent a little bit more money. I was so cheap with my money thinking this is just a fluke. It's never going to happen again. And next month I'm close to that. And then I bought albacore, the chunk tuna, instead of the bits and pieces. And I could slowly, those things matter to me. I could slowly see my organic eggs versus regular eggs. Right. And I was willing to pay a little, and my lifestyle has started to improve. And then it becomes a slippery slope of success where you go, wow, the more I sell, the more people I impact, the better my lifestyle gets. And so then I'll sell more so I can impact more people and I'll have a better lifestyle. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Do you feel like you had a resistance to selling, or do you just feel like you didn't know how to do it?
I probably had a resistance to selling, which then was a byproduct of I never wanted to learn how to do it because I thought it was kind of a sleazy thing to do.
Right.
I never understood that all selling is a transference of feelings. If I like this bottle of water and I want you to drink it, I have to transfer my enthusiasm and passion and excitement for this bottle of water over to you so that you'll ask me to purchase it. And that's all selling is. Now I'm the assistant buyer. I'm not the salesman.
Right. Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? Because I think that we have grown up, particularly those of us who are a little older, have grown up with the idea of sales being that guy with that horrible caterpillar version of a mustache in a car lot in a cheap polyester suit, who's just looking to sell you a $300 car for $3,000. And that I think that has had a lot of impact on us. We see it in movies and in TV shows, and we go, "Ooh, I don't want to be that," and we coil back rather than owning our value. And I think it's a big lesson for people, because for me it's interesting because we're talking about sales, we're talking about entrepreneurship, but talk to us for a moment about how you see this transfer over to, say, a CEO or a C-suite individual.
Oh, man. It transfers all the way because today I do less selling. We have sales teams, we have marketing teams, we have operations teams, but I'm still selling a vision.
Yes.
I'm selling a vision to my team. I'm selling a vision to my clients who buy a Fit Body Bootcamp, and I'm selling them on the idea of buying a second, third, fourth location. And so as a CEO or a leader or mid-level manager, you're still selling an idea or a process
yes.
or a vision, right? And if you don't think you're selling, man, people are so, what's the word I'm looking for? They are so head in the sand about the idea of selling these days because they think, well, I don't want to pressure anyone into anything. You're not pressuring them into anything. Most of us love to be sold as long as what we're getting has value to us, right? And so the way I look at it is if I want my salespeople to make more money, I have to sell them on the idea of selling more franchises and more coaching services so that they can have a better life. Otherwise, they're going to go look elsewhere for a job opportunity. So, and if I want my clients to have great service, I got to tell my operations team to make sure they deliver exceptional, over-the-top service, because if they do, they'll make more money. And of course, then I have to back it up by giving them more money. And so I'm always selling my vision, my plan, the service. And the moment you stop selling is the moment that you start crumbling your empire.
It's very interesting. I'm working with a couple of partners right now from a company that does recruiting. And, it's a hard sales business. It's constant sales. And, so they're always battling those numbers. And one of the things I said to the president of the company is, what are you selling your salespeople? And he was like, what do you mean? I said, what are you selling your salespeople? And he goes, great commissions that they'll get paid well. I go, it ain't enough. It ain't enough, because they can go down the road and get that. And so you're absolutely right. You've got to understand that you're selling a vision. You're selling, as we talk about, you're selling your purpose. You're selling the reason you are on the planet and the reason that what you do matters. It's interesting to me as we talk about this, because I would guess, I'm not saying it's true, I would guess some seeds might have got planted when you were much, much younger because you worked at Disney.
I did.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. It's funny, too. There's two particular times in my life that seeds of selling and service got planted. One was when I worked with, I didn't work with my father. My father, when we came to America, my dad, after a couple of years, opened up a little tailor shop. And I saw him trying to sell, if you brought your pants in to get hemmed up, he would try and sell you a pair of socks with it afterwards. And I saw that he was trying to always add value and sell, and he saw nothing wrong with it. So even though I saw the sales process in action, I was still resistant to it as I grew up. But the other part was at Disney, in Disneyland. Mm-hmm. Man, I grew up in Anaheim, and so I went and got a job after high school at Disneyland, and I worked there for 6 years. And I always tell people this, I wish I had paid more attention in the 2 weeks of Disney University that they put us through before you could even wipe off a table. Like, if you and your family came to eat, before I could even, as a busboy, wipe off your table, and that's what I started off as, a busboy, then I went to a fry cook, dinner cook, and then a sous chef. Man, I had to go through a 2-week Disney University training to learn the culture, why Walt Disney started Disneyland, how when you're inside of Disneyland, not Disney World, Disneyland, you look around and you cannot see outside world. You can't see buildings. You can't see electrical wires, because Walt wanted this to be literally the magic kingdom where you're in a different planet, different place. And towards the probably the last 2 years of working at Disneyland, I realized how important the service is, because the economy wasn't doing so good the last 2 years that I was working there. Yet every year Disney kept raising their prices, while Magic Mountain, Knott's Berry Farm kept lowering their prices. And the only reason was that Disney had found a way to deliver over-the-top service, experience, and what they call the Disney magic. Like, I was not an employee, I was a cast member. Mm-hmm. And you're not a customer, you're a guest. And that means that if you want to know where the restroom is, I have to point with 3 fingers. And if you have a child in a wheelchair or in a stroller, I have to drop down to one knee. All those little things that I extracted from Disney by way of service and always raising their prices in exchange for massive value, I now use in my franchise.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, how many people I've met who have worked in places like that. So I've met lots of people who started out at McDonald's who are now, high-level individuals. And they go, fantastic training. Do they agree with the product? No, they hate the product. But the system of culture was phenomenal. Same with Disney. And when I look at even like superstars, whether it's like Justin Timberlake or Christina Aguilera, where do they come from? Disney. The training and the discipline around that. Let's go into that, because again, more seeds, because you're a big guy around discipline, and that wasn't your forte. So tell us about that. Tell us about who you were lacking discipline and why discipline is so important now.
Yeah. So let me tell you how bad lack of discipline is. So it's so funny. I mean, as you position it this way, that I had these seeds planted in me, I guess like that bamboo plant where you plant it and for years nothing happens, and then in like 1 month it grows 30 feet. That's probably me. These seeds from my father and from Disney and from Jim Franco, my personal training client, were planted in me. But I think maybe, I don't know, habitually, I've always been, I've leaned towards lazy. I've leaned towards unstructured, undisciplined. I mean, I was a fat kid throughout high school. My parents didn't encourage me to lose weight, play sports, eat healthy. And so I always took the path of least resistance. Now, I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur because I saw my dad as an entrepreneur. And as much as I loved working at Disneyland and I had other jobs, I simply didn't see myself as answering to someone else. I looked at myself as an unemployable person because I would always heads with my managers and assistant managers who lorded over me. And so I decided, all right, well, I'm going to open up my own business. And, I opened up my own personal training studios, and they did okay, and they grew. But ultimately, when I started the Fit Body Bootcamp franchise in 2012, I franchised it. By 2013, late 2013, early 2014, I was ready to file bankruptcy. I had a anxiety attack so big that I thought I was having a heart attack, and I went to the doctor thinking that I just had a heart attack. You've got to tell me what's going on with me. They did the EKG test, figured out that it was not a heart attack. It was my first of many anxiety attacks that I was going to have. I had lost $640,000 in this franchise already. I had more franchisees leaving than coming on board every month in 2014. Yeah. And I had a business partner. We had a very toxic adversarial relationship. And I was the guy that always had my head in the sand. I was the guy that said, tomorrow it'll be better. I was the guy that didn't open up the lines of communication with him. I was the guy that had this passive aggressive energy towards my employees who would show up late. Instead of writing them up or having a talk with them or giving them feedback, I would simply have this resentful energy towards them. And that becomes adversarial over time.
Absolutely.
And
toxic.
Very toxic. And all these things. So all of a sudden you're losing money. You're unhappy with your business partner. You're not happy with your employees. All these things compound, and you have franchisees leaving faster than they're coming on board. I felt like I was isolated. I was suffering in silence. And one summer day, I had this massive anxiety attack where I thought literally I was dying. And that was the day that I told myself that it's time to man up. And and I knew that it was a simple issue of leadership. It wasn't that some other franchise was better than mine or out marketing me. Because, dude, I know internet marketing. I was doing internet marketing the 10 years before I even started Fit Body Bootcamp. So no one could out market me, could out service me. I simply was a horrible leader. And I'm the one who let the relationship with my business partner get toxic by not confronting and communicating. I'm the one who chose not to give feedback because I wanted their approval and I didn't want to hurt their feelings. And so I chose to not give feedback and instead had an adversarial relationship with my business partners. I'm the one who chose to isolate and not communicate with my franchisees. And therefore they felt like they weren't cared for. They left. And so once I decided it's time to man up, I said those 5 words to myself. Within a 6-month period, I parted ways with my business partner, corrected or fired the employees that were uncorrectable, and had a very open conversation with our franchisees, the 82 franchisees that were left. We started off with like 150 franchisees when we franchised, and
you dwindled it down.
Yeah. You're supposed to go this way. I'm going that way. And I had a very open conversation with them. And so, unfortunately, leadership is not a light switch. It's a dimmer switch that over time you get better and better. And people always ask me, oh, well, what was your first leadership decision? Well, it was about not hitting the snooze button anymore. I would set my alarm for a certain time, and I would wake up at that time. I decided that I can't be an imposter anymore, and it's time to start eating clean and working out again because I'd given up on my workouts. I traded my workouts and my nutrition in exchange for trying to make the business run. Well, right. Unless you're whole, I read a quote this morning. They said, you can't fill someone else's cup from your empty cup. So I've got to be whole if I want to help others, franchisees, team members, etc. And so I took care of myself first. I started to sleep at the same time, wake up at the same time every day. I said no to a lot of opportunities that I would say yes to so that I can focus on the one thing that mattered, my franchise. And one it's time to man up moment at a time, I literally climbed to the top. And it's funny because at that 2014, we were doing about $3 million a year and actually losing money. I mean, we were revenuing $3 million, but had zero profits. Today, here we are 4.5 years later, 5 years later, and we're just over 20 million and profiting massively, 2 times on the Inc. 5000 list. And nothing else changed other than I became a better, more decisive leader. I became disciplined. I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. If I say I will be here at this time, I will be there. I will exceed your expectations. I will be prepared. And then I expect that of everybody around me. I'm not worried about hurting their feelings, asking for their approval. I don't need their consideration. I'm not a jerk by any means, but I'm very clear in the way I communicate. And I realize how empowering that is. And I've chosen to be a control freak. People always say, gee, control freak is bad. Don't be a control freak. Look, I love controlling my diet, my exercise, my relationship with my family, my relationship with my staff, my marketing, my time, my schedule, who calls me, who doesn't call me, when I do a podcast, when I don't. I control every single element in my life so that I can have a predictable outcome. I was the guy who, if you called me and we weren't scheduled to talk, I would answer the phone. And before I know it, that's called time theft, as far as I'm concerned. You ate up some of my time. Now I'm rushed to the next meeting. I'm late to the meeting. They look at me as an imposter because a true person would show up on time prepared, but right. I chose to answer the phone. So it's this domino effect of becoming disciplined, structured, and really not giving a fuck about what anybody else thinks. Only caring about two things, the business and my family. I want a business that's profitable and that serves the community that I serve. And I want to make sure that I'm there with my family and building memories and experiences, because those are the only two things that matter to me.
You hit on, thank you. That was powerful. And you hit on something that I think is a bit of a entrepreneurial nightmare. I think, we live in the time, I've been talking about this with many of my guests over the last year or two, which is we live in a time of entrepreneurial rock stars. When I was a kid, people wanted to be a rock star. Now people want to be, they want to be the entrepreneur. That's the version of rock star. Great, fantastic. But you can't be a rock star without practice. You can't be a rock star. See, I wrote a whole piece around this. It was called Rock Stars and Leadership. There's a big document I wrote on it, and it's out on my blog somewhere. But I talked about meeting this guy, Mike, who wanted to be a rock star. And he was really good on guitar. He was really good. But he was not having any success. And he talked to me, this is 20 odd years ago. And he tells me, he said, why don't I make it? And I said, how often do you practice? And he goes, well, you've heard me, I'm really good. I go, I didn't ask you that. How often do you practice? And he goes, every day. I go, when? He goes, just throughout the day. I go, how often? Well, it depends. Sometimes it's one, sometimes it's, I said, did you like George Harrison? Fortunately, it was 20 odd years ago he knew who George Harrison was. Did you like George Harrison? And he goes, as a guitar player, he goes, yeah. I said, did you like When My Guitar Gently Weeps? He goes, yeah. I go, do you know how he learned to do that song? He goes, no. I said, he took lessons from Eric Clapton and he practiced for 8 hours a day until his fingers bled. That's how he became that good. And I said, and he'd already done his 10,000 hours in Germany practicing playing in the cave and all those places with the Beatles. So it wasn't like he wasn't good. He just had a commitment to excellence. And I think that rock star instant fame is more than ever before, even more than 20 odd years ago, because we see these people who seem to be instantaneously famous. But, the example I use is just Justin Bieber.
Oh,
Justin Bieber, who everybody goes, oh, he's a snot-nosed kid. And I go, watch the movie Never Say Never. It's a documentary about him when he was like 14 or 16 years old. And you find out this kid's been working at this, playing drums, learning music, practicing since he was 4. Now, you can think he's a snot-nosed asshole. I get that. But at his craft, the discipline, the focus, the commitment has been unwavering. And the reason he went in the toilet and did all the things that he did and has still been able to come back and he's now the most requested person for other artists to play with is because of that level. Justin Timberlake, who comes out of the Disney world, the guys who were in the band with him said the guy was nuts. He worked insanely. Will Smith works insanely. Will Smith says, you can beat me at anything, but on the treadmill, you're going to die before I quit. And he said, that's how I approach life. And that, so it's an interesting piece because I'm very much a flow guy. I believe in the flow. I believe in creativity. But the balance is, where is my discipline that I need? And where don't I need it? Where do I need to allow myself to flow? And I think very few people grasp that. Where does your flow come in? Because you talked about controlling all these things. Where about your flow? Because I know that that's there too.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, in fact, on Saturday night, I was here in my office because my kids were asleep at home. Speaking of drums, I played all types of hand percussions, like cajones, dumbeki, and I came here and I did a Facebook or Instagram live, and I was playing the cajon. Like, I love music. I love going out surfing. And again, going back to being a control freak, I control my schedule so tight that every week, Monday mornings, I'm out surfing. Like, it's on my schedule. The waves may not be there, but if there's no waves, I'm the guy paddling around on my surfboard. If there are waves, then I'm surfing, because that to me is active yoga. It's active therapy.
I get it.
In here playing my drums, even if it's on a weekend. I said, hey, the kids are sleeping, honey. I'm going to go to the office and play the drums. And I said, what the hell? Let me just go live and see and communicate with my audience about non-business, about what they do. So I do find flow in activity, but it's still scheduled for me. I don't do anything impulsive. And people go, isn't that sad? There's nothing impulsive about you? I go, no, it's not sad, because things that are impulsive to me give me anxiety. If I don't know, if you and I are going to meet up for lunch and I don't know what time, if you say between 11 and 1 we're going to eat lunch, I don't know what time. Is it 11, 12, or 1? And are we eating sushi or steak? I need to know all the facts so that I can show up without having anxiety, and then I could use the rest of the time to dominate my path, because I'm only on this planet for a certain amount of time, and I've got a massive goal that I've got to dominate. And I think not enough people focus on the amount of time they're on this planet, and they really spend so much time consuming other people's content. I'm all about consuming. I mean, we're doing a podcast right now so that people can consume this knowledge. I've got cameras up, and we're going to put this on social media. That's great, consume. But what about actually creating? We're put on this planet to create. We have this gift from God or the universe, whoever the higher power is, that says, hey, you're supposed to go and define and find and develop your purpose and then reach your fullest potential. The only way you do that is by constantly creating and fine-tuning. Like the documentary Hero Dreams of Sushi. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't.
Dude, great documentary. He's a 90-year-old man now in a little 9-seater restaurant inside of a subway station in Tokyo, and he's still trying to perfect the perfect roll, right? The perfect sashimi piece. And his apprentices spent over 10 years just to make the rice correctly. It's a great documentary, Hero Dreams of Sushi. And the man is simply trying to meet his fullest potential with his purpose. He knows that's his purpose. I know this is my purpose. But at the end of the day, you do need some time for flow, but why not schedule it in? Why be impulsive? Because if you're impulsive, it might end up taking up the rest of your day. Now you're not dominating your path, and you feel crappy about it because you're not meeting your purpose or you missed a meeting. I don't know. I think more people need to be control freaks. They need to be disciplined. They need to be structured, because I was the guy that was the opposite, and life sucked.
That's it. Very interesting. So talk to us about something you've brought up now several times, which is anxiety. Was that something that came out of nowhere for you? Because I know it did for me. Like, I never had anxiety, ever. And then I had a house fire, and I was good. Like, be the action guy, and I was the leader, and I made it happen, no problem. And then 3 months later, I go to speak on stage, and for the first time in I've been speaking 30-odd years, for the first time, I'm like, somebody's got my chest in a vice.
Yes.
So was it spontaneous for you? I mean, because I look at mine and I actually now know I've always had anxiety. I just really managed it in such a way that I didn't even know. But now it's like, oh yeah, of course, that's what it was.
Dude, you took the words out of my mouth. Before that big anxiety attack in 2013, I now realized that I had small incremental feelings. Like, I would feel the flutters in my heart. I would feel my pulse going faster. But I just figured, no big deal, discounted it, and just kept going. But I think over time, when you don't pay attention to your body, to your physiology, it will just literally crush you. I mean, my throat was closing up. My chest was in a vice, just like you said. I felt like everything went black and white in tunnel vision. Yeah. And I literally felt both of my arms tingling. And I go, gee, I think this is a heart attack.
Yeah.
But when it happened, I didn't necessarily think I was stressed in that time, but it's a cumulative effect of, like you said, your house caught fire 3 months earlier. You were fine. You were the superhero. Well, I later found out, because I ended up working with a therapist, to help overcome my anxieties. And he said, all anxiety is anticipation of future pain.
Exactly.
And I realized that because I was anticipating a bad partnership falling apart. I was anticipating how embarrassing it was going to be when I would have to file for bankruptcy and close down, shut down Fit Body Bootcamp franchise in 2013. And I was anticipating all those things in the back of my head. And of course, that manifested this massive anxiety. So whenever we anticipate future pain, we're setting ourselves up for anxiety. And the best thing you can do to not have anxiety is to handle everything when it comes your way, to not take your head out of the sand and address things right away. And today, that's what I do. Whether I like it or not, I recently I had to part ways with a leadership member in my company. Let me tell you, I didn't like parting ways with someone who had a leadership role in my company.
No.
But right thing to do. In a previous life, I would have ignored it, danced around it, waited, had a weird energy and relationship with him until finally I had some kind of massive anxiety attack, and then I would lash out at him. That was
Very
right.
good.
That was my previous response. Today it was, hey, fella, let's have a seat. Here's what happened. Here's why it's wrong. I know you agree, and you have to part ways with us now. And that's it. As it turns out, we actually stayed friends, but he's no longer here. And I'd rather have that relationship than be some jerk who lets it build up, have an anxiety attack, and then lash out.
But this is really interesting, Bedros, because this is where you and I are so alike. Because I think that, both of us look very yang. We look like tough guys. We both got builds, and we're both very direct. And so the societal category of that is asshole. What do they call it? Resting asshole face, right? I've got resting asshole face. I can't do anything about it. It's what I have. Okay. But it's interesting that in a society of nice, neurotic, insecure, controlling emotions, that's my acronym for nice, of people being nice, everybody's repressing the truth. And it's interesting because the people who get to know me will often say, oh, I didn't realize that you're so heartfelt and you're so compassionate and caring. And I go, but I didn't used to be. And they go, who were you before? I go, I was so nice, I was an asshole. And they go, what do you mean? I go, I was nice all the time until I blew up. Now I don't blow up because I go, this is the boundary. Did I state this to you? Maybe I wasn't clear enough. Was there something that was unclear? And by reiterating, do you understand this is the boundary? And they go, yeah. Okay, good. So do you understand that now we're outside of that parameter? Yeah. So what's the consequence? And I don't have to have that. But I want to admit to everybody, that temptation, it's never gone away. I'm a coke addict, man. Somebody puts coke in front of you, you're a coke addict, you want it. Somebody puts a conflictual opportunity in front of me, I want to go nice. I want to do a line of nice, right? Yeah. But it's the discipline to go, this is short-term pain for long-term gain, and going after nice is short-term gain for long-term pain.
Amen.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Is that what you mean when you say, because I want to come to the title of your book, Man Up, Cut the Bullshit, Dominate Your Path. Because there's three pieces there. Man up, 1, cut the bullshit, 2, and dominate your path, which I see as something very different that I want to go into next. So do you see them as 3 separate things?
I do, because manning up is finally stepping up to that line. Remember the boundary that you said? Manning up is finally drawing, and I'm using my foot right now. You can't see it, but I'm actually drawing a line in front of me with my foot. Manning up is to draw that line so that you don't go nice, 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 and then explode at people. Because that was me. That was you. And people go, oh, whoa, what a nut. Well, in reality, that thing was just bubbling under the skin for so long. So manning up, yes, is drawing a line in the boundary. Cut the bullshit is stop making excuses. Stop making excuses for your business partner, for your employees, why they're late. Stop making excuses for yourself. Well, I didn't sleep well, so I'm not going to wake up at 4:30 in the morning. I'm going to hit the snooze button. So really, cut the bullshit is stop making excuses. And dominate your path is simply rise to your potential. Like, look inside and don't shortchange yourself. Don't ask, maybe I just have the potential to make $3 million a year. Like, dude, we're doing $20 million a year, and I know that I've got the potential for a $100 million company here. And so I have a gun to my head that I'm holding there because in my head, I see what the $100 million company looks like, but we're not there yet. And I have such massive urgency to get there. But I didn't have that before.
No.
Because I didn't really look at any path to dominate. But today I know my path is to build a $100 million franchise, and I'm going to do that.
So talk to us about this, because part of your philosophy, I think, is something that all of us who are entrepreneurs need to hear, which is, and I think it's a bit of a slap upside the head, to be honest, which is this hustle and grind to scale and structure. Yeah. Because most of us who are entrepreneurs, and I know it's been very true for me, I actually posted it on Facebook recently and said, what's been the number one flaw in your business? And I said, my lack of structure has been, the structure of the business had been, without doubt, the number one flaw, and it's the thing that I'm constantly pulled myself back to. Talk to us about this hustle and grind to scale and structure.
Absolutely. So when we all start off as entrepreneurs, you're either a one-man or woman show, or maybe you have it's you and a couple of employees. And really, you do it all. You're the guy writing the paychecks. You're the guy writing the electric bill. You're the janitor. You're the trainer. You're the job owner. You're the everything.
You're the milliner. You're the milliner, meaning you have all the hats.
Yes, exactly. And so at that point, you're in a hustle and grind phase, because if something has to get done, you're doing it. You're the marketer. You're the seller. You're the janitor. You're everything. And you might delegate to a little bit of your staff, and everybody can hustle and grind to $500,000 to $1 million a year. But at some point, and the way I look at hustle and grind is when a 747 passenger jet that's completely full with luggage and humans, it's on the tarmac and it's going to take off. They go full thrust and we get pinned back into our seat. That is hustle and grind. We're in full thrust, and it's just go, 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 work around the clock, sacrifice your family, sacrifice your diet, your workout, your mindset, all of it. You have to bleed for that. I get it. But we get so caught, see, we're humans, and we get caught up in habit. And that loose habit becomes a fixed habit. And before you know it, you're trying to hustle and grind to 2 million, 3 million. Well, it doesn't happen that way, because you soon become the bottleneck.
Right.
And so when a 747 is going to take off, it's in thrust mode, hustle and grind. When it goes up there, they pull back and they start cruising. And so at some point, you have to go from hustle and grind to scale and structure, meaning having a team around you who's capable of being delegated to and taking your ideas and your vision and running it across the finish line. If you're trying to run the marketing across the finish line, the sales, the service, the recurring orders, you can't do it all. So that's what had happened with me. Every time my partner or my employees would drop the ball, I just figured I'll hustle and grind and I'll make it happen. And soon it's either an anxiety attack or a divorce or a heart attack, right? And so to me, there's a very obvious delineation between you hustle and grind to build the infrastructure, and then you start reinvesting your money. It's okay to go broke again temporarily, to hire a team around you who can help you scale and structure to 10 million, 20 million, 100 million.
But oftentimes, somebody who's in that mindset, and, as I said, multiple hats, is the leader, has done everything themselves, they become control freaks in the sense of micromanaging, right? So this is an interesting piece, Bedros, because you're talking about being a control freak, yet at the same time, you're talking about letting go. So talk to us a little bit about that.
I'll tell you this. Anyone who says, hey, look, but I'm a control freak. I got 15 employees, but no one can do it better than me. It's not that they're a control freak. See, I applaud them if they're a control freak. It's not that they're a control freak. They have employees who are inferior and who shouldn't be on their bus, and they need to pull over, open the door, and let these people out. They have losers as employees who are incapable of doing the job, but instead of talking to these employees and building them up into team members, there's a very big difference between an employee and a team member. A team member has a unified goal to win. An employee shows up a little late, leaves a little early, does the bare minimum. And so anyone that says, well, I'm a control freak, that's why I can't trust my employees. No, the answer is you're actually okay with having mediocre employees on board, and until you man up, fire them, and bring on A-level players so that you can feel comfortable to let go of that piece that you can control to someone else. Like, while I'm a control freak, I've got a team around me that's so badass that I can just delegate to, and they get done. But before, I still had a group of employees, and I would delegate, shit wouldn't get done. So ultimately I go, fuck it, I'll do it.
Right.
That's the difference.
But there is another piece in there, and I definitely get where you're coming from. But the other piece in there is this: is if you don't create an environment, a culture that grows your people, even A class players will play a C plus C minus game, and that's where I'm talking about this control freak shit comes from, where someone says no one can do it as well as me. Well, you know what? You don't give them a chance to actually show that they can, because you're always leaning over their shoulder, and your bad breath doesn't let them actually step up.
Good point. Very good point.
So and I think that's again this point of discernment that is so often missed, because the justification is, as you said, nobody does it well as me. And your argument, very good argument, is, well, maybe they're just not A-class players, and if they're not, get them off the bus. Fully agree. But what if they are B-class players who want to be A, but you need to coach, you need to train, you need to let the leash off a little bit?
And it goes back to being leaders. It goes right back to being a leader and leadership, because a strong leader is not just focused on the sales and service of outside. How can I build my team? Like just yesterday, in fact, it's still on Instagram, just yesterday, we had a whole cultural team game thing going on where we blindfold each other and walk around and compete and time each other. We're competitive. I brought in Craig Ballantyne, spent $25,000 to do a perfect team workshop. And literally the way that whole thing started was, all right, guys, all of you in here 2 years from now get the Team Member of the Year award. Now let's work backwards 2 years. What are you doing today and over the next 600 days to get that award? Like, what a great workshop. Every one of our team members felt empowered. I bring in improv instructors to help us, communicate. We still have fun. It's funny, it's exciting, it's fun, but we learn how to communicate better, handle challenging situations. And so if you're not coaching up your staff, your team, you're doing yourself a disservice, because think what you and I do as leaders. We go to events and seminars where we learn from thought leaders. We read books from Tony Robbins or Maxwell Maltz and whoever. But if your income is growing and your self-development is growing, that's great. But if your income is growing, your self-development is growing, but your team is still here, you got to grow that too. And if you don't, that's a sign of bad leadership.
It's very interesting because in two partners, I'm a company brought us in. We're working with the two partners, and I asked them, well, does culture matter? And both of them, absolutely yes. Culture is number one for me. And great. And so I asked one of the partners, well, how do you build the culture? He goes, it's real simple. You want to have a great culture, make sure your people win. And I go, okay, that sounds pretty good. How do they do that? They make great sales and we pay them well. I go, oh, you're dead in the water, my friend. And he goes, what do you mean? I go, you have to create a culture where they can win. You're expecting them to come in and win and then not let them not sort it out. Did I lose you?
Oh, Dove, it was frozen there for about a whole minute. Here you are.
Where did I freeze on your end?
When you started talking about the two guys and the culture.
Right. I'll just pick that up and then we'll get and cut it. Yeah. So I'm working with these two partners, and one of the guys, I ask them, does culture matter? They both say yes. And I say, okay, great. It matters a lot. Yes. Okay, great. Tell me why culture matters, because we want our people to win. And we'll have a great culture when people win. No, you have to have a great culture for people to win. It's the exact opposite. And a lot of the time, because he's a sales-driven guy, he's like, well, when people are winning, we'll reward them well, and that'll create a great culture. No, what that creates is a boiler room where people are cutthroat with each other because, and so when you're doing stuff like training your people, the improv, teaching them communication, all those things, this is so valuable, and so few leaders, even today, really get that. They really get that understanding. We're getting close to the end here, and you and I obviously could have a much longer talk, but I'm going to be respectful of your time as well as you are of mine, and we want to serve people. One of my buddies who's a very powerful entrepreneur, I had him on my show years ago, and he said to the audience, because I often say, you can reach out to me, and he goes, yeah, but when you do, know this: Dove is a time Nazi. He'll give you 20 minutes. That's what you get. So show up knowing what you want. It's that same thing, because my life could just get sucked away. So coming to this, what is it that scares you? What is it that could keep you up at night when you look at the world around you and business?
I'll tell you what scares me is when I look around right now, and I see that we piss and moan about millennials and how millennials are just, entitled and they're lazy. And I get it. But I got to tell you, more than half my team is millennials, and they're putting our franchise on the map. We're one of the fastest growing fitness franchises on the planet. And so I think what we need to do is take more responsibility as adults, because there's another generation coming after the millennials, like my kids who's 10 and 12 years old.
Gen Z.
Yeah, I'm teaching them to become entrepreneurs. I'm teaching them to become responsible. I'm teaching them to say, I'm sorry the right way. I'm sorry, I screwed up. How can I make it right? Like, a proper apology has 3 parts to it. I'm sorry, I screwed up. How can I make it right? And when I look around and when I'm out and about with the family and I see parents just letting their kids get sucked into their devices during dinner instead of actually, at a restaurant, you'll see kids with their headphones on, and oh man, it crushes my heart. That scares the shit out of me, because I wonder, when I leave this planet, what are my kids and their grandkids going to have to deal with?
Yeah. One of the things I wrote about in my last book, in this one, was I said, I want you to picture yourself in a restaurant, and as you're in that restaurant, there's 4 people sitting in front of each other and their heads are all down. And I said, and if I bring you in a time machine from 1960 or even 1970, you might think everybody's religious and they're all got their head down because they're praying, right? And the answer is they are praying. They're praying to social media. We're so busy being in relationship with people who are not present that we're not really in relationship with people who are present. And most of all, that means we're not in relationship with ourselves. Because one of the things I know as the kind of leader and coach that I am and the people I work with, people don't realize that one of the biggest problems is loneliness. And I just want to say this to everybody. Loneliness is when you are missing you, not anybody else. When you're missing you. And if you can't bear to be alone without looking at that phone, then you're not connected to yourself. And as a leader, we have to be connected to ourselves first, because leadership is self first. Then we have to lead our people, and one of the things we have to do is lead them to lead themselves. It's a fascinating piece. What is the one thing that you want, the one practical thing that you want the leaders, the entrepreneurs watching our show today, if they came back and said, this is what I want, this is the one thing I want them to get, what would it be?
I want them to understand that they have an obligation and a duty to man up. I want them to understand that they have that obligation and duty to become the best leaders possible, and that everything starts with them and ends with them. Like, leadership is the problem, leadership is the solution. And it's time for entrepreneurs to start manning up and taking responsibility for that.
Yeah, I love that. It's beautiful. I thank you for that. It's been great having you on the show, my man. I really do appreciate it. Please tell our listeners, our viewers, where they can find out more about you and all the wonderful resources that you offer.
Sure. Well, I'm always available on social media, on Instagram and Facebook, and I'm pretty active on there. And, of course, on my blog, bedroskeuilian.com.
Okay, so we'll make sure that we post the link to that and that we'll give that URL so people can reach out. And I'll say this as I say it always, please don't just listen to this podcast. God, yeah, I know you're listening to it while you're on the rowing machine, or while you're on the treadmill, or you're wandering around the supermarket, whatever it is. But for God's sake, stop, take a note, and actually take some action. And I highly recommend that you listen to every single show minimum twice, because I guarantee you missed a ton the first time. Because this is gold, guys. Bedros has shared with us here today is absolutely golden, and I really hope that you'll take advantage of it. I want to thank you for joining us. I want to thank Bedros for joining us today. Thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure and honor. Hope you'll stay with us till the very end as we sign off to everybody else and say, thank you, dear listener and viewer, for tuning in. Remember, the research consistently shows that the biggest challenges facing the most successful companies is somewhat counterintuitive that the fastest growing companies often hit a point where they realize that they are spending a fortune attracting, training, and developing their top talent, only to have them leaving them at an alarming rate. If you're sick of investing in training and developing talent, having them leave you before you get a return on your ROI, then reach out to us at fullmontyleadership.com, where we provide you with the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty essence of your organization by tapping into your purpose. fullmontyleadership.com, providing you with the concrete soft skills to get you and your organization to the top and keep you there. Why? Because you can't outsource authenticity. Remember, get yourself over to the Matrix too and get your Matrix Leadership Self-Assessment Tool. It's valued at $197. You get it free. matrix.fullmontyleadership.com. Till next time, this is Dov Baron, Full Monty Leadership, saying, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about where you need to really man up, cut the crap, which is the nice way of saying it. Man up, cut the bullshit, and dominate your empire. Till next time, I'm out.